Okay, here's my audience. 1, 2, 3. Genetically modified organisms, otherwise known as GMOs, are abundantly on our store shelves. This seems to have become the way most foods are being produced. But the question is, are they safe? From purple tomatoes, super weeds, pest-resistant plants, pest-resistant bugs, higher yielding crops, more food for the populace, the future seems both bright and scary at the same time. In my journey of studying dietetics, I've taken many science classes and done my share of research on GMOs. I'm not a Monsanto executive or an earthy crunchy foodie. I'm just your average American with no agenda. In this very brief speech on this topic, I just want to arm people with the most current information out there so they can make their own informed decisions on GMOs based strictly on the facts. GMOs are the topic of much debate these days. Science is playing the role of evolution or God while changing the landscape of the world around us. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the term GMO, let me sum them up and give you a brief history on them. GMOs are genetically modified organisms such as seeds, plants, or animals whose DNA has been altered or modified in a lab. The reason behind this is to produce faster growing or faster yielding food sources. Our information on GMOs is in a very infantile stage. A brief timeline. In 1935, DNA, otherwise known as, in 1935 DNA was discovered. In 1973, recombinant DNA, otherwise known as man-made DNA, was created. In 1975, a small group of doctors and lawyers gathered at a SMOV conference in California to create guidelines for the safe use of GMOs. By 1980, the first GMO was patented. In 1982, the FDA approved the first GMO for public use. It was an insulin created from E. coli known as humulin. In 1994, GMOs hit the grocery store in the form of a flavor saver tomato. It had a longer shelf life and delayed ripening. By 1996, GMO-resistant weeds started to appear in Australia. They were 11 times more resistant to the herbicides used in GMOs. Clearly, nature had caught up. In 1997, Europe made GMO labeling on all food products mandatory, including on animal feed. By the turn of the century, GMO crops dominated the marketplace with over 100 million acres planted worldwide. Then in 2003, GMO-resistant pests emerged. In less than a decade, superpests had developed. They were resistant to the Bt toxins used in GMOs. The Bt toxins are toxins that are used on pests through ingestion. Once in the pests, they would destroy the pest's guts from the inside by punching holes in the lining. By 2011, those same Bt toxins were found in the blood of pregnant women, and evidence showed that they were passed on to the fetuses of those women. In 2009, Monsanto introduced a new pesticide, Roundup 2, and a new patent to make the first GMO seed patent obsolete. And now in 2015, Monsanto's GMO patent expires on the original Roundup. So what does this all mean to you? Well, here's the upside of all this. These products have had higher yields and caused less stress on the land, more bountiful harvests in a fraction of the time. For instance, let's look at a genetically modified salmon. These salmon pictured here, they aren't actually scale sized. The ones at the top are about 16.5 inches long. The ones at the bottom are about 4 to 5 inches long. Believe it or not, all these salmon are the same age. The ones at the top are genetically modified. The ones at the bottom are not. That's an example of GMOs at work. Genetically engineered salmon are pending approval by the Food and Drug Administration here in the United States. Another example of it's more beneficial are with fruits and vegetables. Some gardeners already grow what you know as what is known as a conventional purple tomato. But a small British company is planning to actually grow this purple tomato and to sell it in the United States as a genetically modified purple tomato. It crosses a tomato plant with a snapdragon plant, and it gives the tomato the same antioxidant health benefit as blueberries. Therefore, it will improve its nutritional value in everything from ketchup to pizza. And what would be coming next? Well, Del Monte has engineered a pink pineapple that includes lycopene, an antioxidant compound that gives tomatoes their red color and may have a role in preventing cancer. The USDA has approved importation of the pineapple, yet it won't allow that pineapple to be grown in the United States, only outside the United States. It is still pending FDA's final approval. So what are the downsides of GMOs? Well, GMOs have changed the environment. And here's the thing. If something does go wrong with GMO production, there'll be no way to ever reverse what we have done to the land. The weeds, the pests, and the plants will forever be changed. The science itself is very young, and the jury is still out on the long-term effects of modifying living things. There's conflicts of interest in science itself, and for those of you who are supposed to protect the public's best interest and safety, the FDA doesn't require a safety study on labeling of GMOs. The U.S. Food Safety Czar is Michael Taylor. He was Monsanto's former lawyer and vice president. That's a conflict of interest. GMOs have been known to harm the environment. GM crops and their associated herbicides can harm birds, insects, amphibians, marine ecosystems, and soil organisms. They reduce biodiversity, they pollute water resources, and are unsustainable. For example, GM crops are eliminated habitat for monarch butterflies, whose populations are down 50% in the U.S., and they are continuing to decline. The decline is being caused by a Roundup herbicide in milkweed plants, which is the main food source for the monarch. The Roundup herbicide, which is added to GMO's DNA, has been shown to cause defects in amphibians, embryonic deaths, endocrine disruptions, and organ damage in animals, even at very low doses. Elsewhere, GM canola has been found growing wild in North Dakota and California, and it's threatening to pass on its herbicide-tolerant genes to weeds. The GMO technology itself is very crude. Scientists use viruses or bacteria to infect the animal or plant cell with the new DNA. They coat tiny metal pellets with DNA and fire them with a special gene gun, such as the one pictured here. Another way to put DNA into is to put DNA into a fertilized egg with a very fine needle. And yet another way is by using electronic shocks to create holes in the sperm membrane, then force the DNA through the holes. The technology is crude at best. The process of creating a GM plant is highly mutagenic. This means it damages the DNA and creates changes in the genome. Mutations can be beneficial or harmful. Very frequently, a specific mutation can benefit the functioning of the organism itself. Such changes are the basis of evolution through natural selection. Much more frequently, mutations can harm the organism, for example, by giving rise to birth defects and cancer. So in conclusion, the GMO process is still very young. It's one you should be aware of and be informed about. As far as a long-term verdict goes, the jury is still out. Whether or not GMOs are safe and beneficial or detrimental to us has still yet to be determined. So just be informed and be aware and make up your mind for yourself as more information is brought forward in the coming years. Thank you.
That was good.